like you guys to take a moment to think about these things. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and I'm going to ask you guys a few questions. Don't answer out loud. How much money do you have in the bank? Is it enough? What do you do with your money? And what is going to happen to it when you die? Now think about these things. Your house, your car, your material items, the jewelry that's stored up in a box that you never wear. What happens to that when you pass? All right, you can open your eyes. So I think it was on Friday, I saw that the Mega Millions lottery jackpot rose to $1.2 billion. And then I saw numbers were drawn, and I don't think anybody won it. I haven't heard crazy news stories, so I'm going to assume no one's won it. Someone did? Whoa. Okay. Well, here, that's even better. Can you imagine what you would do with $1.28 billion extra dollars? I can tell you my kids would ask to go to Chick-fil-A a lot more. And I'd probably say yes, because who doesn't love a chicken sandwich? So we are all open to the temptation of greed. Whether you have tons of money and you don't have to think about it, whether you have ample, you have plenty, or whether you live paycheck to paycheck, you barely have enough to get by, or even if you don't have a paycheck and you're wondering where your next meal will come from. All of us struggle with greed. There's two lies that I think the world tells us about wealth and possessions, and we fall for them all the time. The first lie is this: more makes you happy. The second, enough gives you security. So more makes you happy, and enough gives you security. Have you ever fallen for those lies? I have. In today's parable, we meet a man who, by the world's standards, is successful. He's rich. He has a decent amount of land. He has more food than he could ever need. Yet Jesus describes him as a fool. Jesus seems to always be a little bit countercultural, right? The things that we think are important are not often important to him. This man has built his life on the two lies that have been told to us since we were little. More makes you happy, and enough gives you security. Jesus wants us to completely rebel against selfish greed, and instead, he teaches us to put our faith and trust in him alone. Jesus is teaching his disciples about remaining faithful in difficult times, but there's a large crowd who's listening to him, like there normally was. And a man suddenly comes and interrupts him and says, hey, tell my brother to split the inheritance with me. And clearly they were having some type of disagreement about money, possessions, land. Verse 14 is how Jesus responded to this demand. But Jesus said to him, "Friend, who set me to be a judge or arbitrator over you?" And he said to them, "Take care, be on your guard against all kinds of greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions." Then Jesus starts telling a parable, and I think by now most of us know that a parable would have been a story that Jesus used to tell and illustrate an important idea. Typically, it was something that had to do with cultural events or things that would have made sense to them. So he said, "The land of a rich man produced abundantly." So he had so many crops. He had a good year. Lots of things came his way. And he thought to himself, "What should I do? For I have no place to store my crops." Then he said this, "I will do this. I will pull down my barns. I'll rip them down, and I'll build larger ones. and I will store all of my grains and my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry. Notice he's talking solely to himself. Now, we might question if working hard and saving up your possessions to take care of yourself is really such a terrible thing. It's not so much that he's worked and produced and that he has enough. It's the why. It's his heart posture. It was 100% focused on him, an inward-focused mindset. He was selfish, completely self-centered. He's talking to himself about himself. Everything is me, my crops, my goods, my money, and he's obsessed with it. This man has no gratitude towards God, no workers to compensate, no friends to share with, and no family to take care of. He's storing up food that will someday go bad when there are people in his time who could have really used that food to eat, to nourish their bodies, not just for extra and ample and the show of it. They really needed food. He simply cares about himself and indulging his desires. So in today's world, in the here and now, we have targeted ads on social media, billboards in big cities, commercials in the middle of every show we watch, even our YouTube shows. Material items that we don't need are shoved in our faces using these platforms. And if you don't have the cash, there's a credit card for that. And to make it easy, we have Apple Pay. So all you have to do is click a button. You can store your credit card information on Amazon, and all you have to do is click Buy Now. The world tells us to keep up with the Joneses, the Kardashians, but get this. The world can even tell us to try to keep up with the people sitting right next to us. But Jesus tells us to guard our hearts against greed and selfishness. Now, I don't think we have a room full of farmers, so this parable might seem a little unrelatable. I think if Jesus was telling this parable now, a couple years ago, he would have illustrated a story using toilet paper. So what if instead this parable was about how much toilet paper you had in the year 2020? What if our worth was defined by how many rolls we had collected on the shelf in the garage? Now it seems funny and we're laughing, but most of us, if not all of us, were hoarding toilet paper like it was going out of style. People made fun of Arizonians for how much toilet paper we had in our garages. There were Facebook posts about how many packages you could get at what store, how long the lines were, and what limit Walmart put on them. There were images of people waiting hours long in lines just to get a couple of rolls. Costco had a whiteboard that would tell you when they sold out of certain things. And we all, in our panic, started to believe the two lies that more would make us happy and enough gives us security. I had surgery a week before the first closure in March. And I hadn't grocery shopped in a couple of weeks. I was focused on myself and what was going on within my family, and it was a little bit of a crisis, so to speak. My mom and I, after surgery, went to a couple of stores after my gifted supply had run out. That's what people gave me after I had surgery, by the way. It wasn't casseroles. It wasn't a casserole. It was toilet paper rolls. I really wanted those casseroles, you guys. But my mom and I looked up a gas station that we had heard wasn't limiting how much toilet paper you could buy. And so we drove over to this less nice of a neighborhood, and we went to go get toilet paper. And my mom and I were like, how many rolls do we get? When's the next time Costco's going to be in stock? How do I provide for my family? And we kind of fell into that, enough will give us security. Now, the reality is there's lots of ways to use the restroom, and we could have figured it out, right? We had hoses in the backyard. We have showers. I've got kids who run around naked anyways. We could have figured it out. But we bought into the lies that enough toilet paper would give us security. It's ridiculous, right? It's ridiculous. And we need to be on guard against our greed. And what made the man in Jesus' parable so foolish was his arrogance. He thought that having all of this grain would be security for his future. But as we go on, we see that obviously that wasn't true. God told him, "You fool, this very night your life is being demanded of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be?" So the man drops dead. The grain's rotting away outside of the barn he never had a chance to build. He didn't take that grain to heaven, just like we aren't taking 100 rolls of toilet paper through the pearly gates. I love learning and reading about Jesus and about parables that he taught. Parables have life-changing lessons in them if we listen. Of course, money is important, but we need to make sure it doesn't become the most important. We all need to have some money to live, but money should absolutely not be what we live for. Just like we all need a little toilet paper, but we don't need to put our faith in how many rolls we have. Jesus ends the parable in verse 21 by saying, "So it is with those who store up for themselves but are not rich towards God." Being rich toward God means putting him first. It means replacing selfish greed with selfless generosity. It means replacing arrogant planning with confident dependence on God. How many of us can say that we are confidently dependent on God? He knows what we need. He will absolutely take care of us. And I hope that you trust that in the days to come. Amen.